Welcome back to this quiet space. You have traveled through the day, and now you have arrived at the shore of sleep. The waves are small, the breeze is warm, and the journey inward begins now. Chapter 1. The Palace Threshold. First Steps into Ancient Stone. The night air moves slowly through the entrance of the palace, carrying with it the scent of old stone and time itself. Your feet find the first step, smooth marble worn by countless passages, and the coolness of it rises through your shoes, through your body, settling somewhere deep in your chest where worry lives. But worry dissolves here, in this place that has forgotten urgency. The archway above stretches wide and welcoming, carved from stones that remember when the world was younger. Each block fits perfectly against the next, patient work of hands that understood the value of time spent well. The stones are gray in the moonlight, sometimes silver, sometimes the color of sleep itself. They whisper nothing urgent, only the quiet song of permanence. Your hand trails along the wall as you pass beneath the arch, and the stone is surprisingly warm despite the coolness of the night. It holds the day's sun like a gentle memory, releasing it slowly into your palm. The texture is smooth in some places, slightly rough in others, telling the story of weather and seasons without words, without hurry. The entrance hall opens before you like a held breath. High above, the ceiling disappears into shadows that feel kind rather than mysterious. Moonlight filters through tall windows, casting long rectangles of silver light across the floor. These pools of light seem placed just for you, stepping stones of illumination that guide your way deeper into this forgotten sanctuary. The floor beneath your feet is made of stones fitted together like a puzzle solved long ago. Some are pale as morning mist, others dark as deep water. They create patterns that your eyes can almost follow, geometric designs that seem to shift and flow in the gentle light. Walking across them feels like walking across the surface of a calm lake, each step creating ripples of quiet sound that fade almost before they begin. The walls rise on either side, not pressing close, but embracing the space with gentle authority. They are thick walls, built to last through centuries of seasons, and they radiate a sense of safety that seeps into your bones. These stones have witnessed countless nights like this one, countless quiet footsteps, countless moments of peace. They remember all of it and offer that memory to you like a gift. Soft shadows gather in the corners where walls meet ceiling, in the spaces between windows, in the gentle curves where doorways begin. These shadows are not empty but full of rest, full of the accumulated quiet of ages. They beckon without demanding, invite without insisting. They are shadows that understand the art of patience. The air here moves differently than outside. It is warmer, stiller, touched with the faint scent of old wood and ancient incense that burned out long ago but left its peace behind. Each breath you take seems deeper than the last, as if the air itself is teaching your body how to rest. Your shoulders begin to lower without your telling them to. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of this timeless place. Small alcoves line the walls, each one holding something simple and beautiful. A carved stone bowl catches moonlight in its basin. A statue of a bird sits perched, as if listening to the night. These objects ask for nothing, expect nothing. They simply exist in their quiet perfection, teaching by their presence that some things need no purpose beyond their own peaceful being. The sound of your footsteps changes as you move deeper into the hall. The hard click of shoe against stone softens to a whisper. Even your breathing seems quieter here, more thoughtful. The palace absorbs harsh sounds and returns them as gentle echoes that fade like ripples on still water. Windows along the walls reveal glimpses of courtyards bathed in moonlight. Gardens sleep in the silver light, their plants and trees peaceful in the night air. The sight of them through the windows feels like seeing dreams made visible. Everything outside appears soft and distant, as if viewed through water or through the gentlest sleep. You pause near one of these windows, your hand resting on the smooth stone sill. The coolness of it travels up your arm like a gentle river. Outside, night flowers open their faces to the moon, releasing fragrances that drift through the window like whispered lullabies. The scent reaches you faintly, mixing with the stone-warm air of the palace interior. The window frame itself is carved with simple designs, leaves and vines that seem to grow from the stone itself rather than being cut into it. Your fingers trace these carvings without thinking, following curves that feel familiar somehow, as if your hands remember this motion from dreams. The stone has been worn smooth by other hands, other travelers who paused here in other centuries, other nights of peace. Moving away from the window, your feet carry you naturally toward a doorway that opens into deeper chambers. The doorway is wide and welcoming, its threshold worn smooth by the passage of many feet over many years. Above it, the arch curves in a perfect shape that pleases the eye without drawing attention to itself. This is architecture that understands humility, beauty that whispers rather than shouts. The threshold stone is darker than the surrounding floor, polished by countless crossings to a surface like dark water. As your foot touches it, you feel a subtle change in the air, a shift from entrance to interior, from arrival to belonging. The sensation is so gentle you might miss it if you were moving quickly, but here, in this place of patient time, every subtle shift has space to be noticed and appreciated. The walls of this next chamber rise even higher, their surfaces decorated with carvings so subtle they seem almost like shadows playing tricks with light. These decorations never demand attention, never insist on being admired. They simply exist, adding their quiet beauty to the accumulated peace of the place. In the moonlight filtering through high windows, the carvings seem to shift and breathe, alive with gentle motion that exists only at the edge of perception. More pools of silver light stretch across the floor here, created by windows placed with thoughtful precision. Walking through these patches of illumination feels like walking through layers of peace, each one deeper and more complete than the last. The light is never harsh, never bright enough to startle. It exists in perfect harmony with the shadows, neither conquering nor conquered, simply sharing the space in ancient balance. The air here carries new scents, subtle and comforting. Old wood that has been polished by centuries of gentle care. Stone that has absorbed decades of burning incense. Fabric that has been touched by moonlight until it holds the scent of silver dreams. These fragrances blend together into something that smells like safety, like home, like the memory of perfect rest. Your breathing has found a new rhythm now, slower and deeper than when you entered. Each breath seems to carry you further into this state of peaceful suspension, this moment between waking and sleeping where everything exists in perfect, gentle balance. The palace accepts your presence without question, offers its peace without condition. The sound of distant water reaches your ears, so faint it might be imagination, might be the sound of your own breathing, might be the whisper of air moving through ancient corridors. It comes from somewhere deeper in the palace, a gentle reminder that even in this place of stone and silence, life continues its quiet flow, water finding its patient way through channels carved by time and wisdom. Chapter 2. The first corridor, where footsteps echo in time. You find yourself drawn forward, deeper into the palace's embrace. The corridor stretches ahead, long and welcoming, its walls rising into shadows that seem to breathe with ancient patience. Your footsteps create a gentle rhythm against the stone floor, each step a soft percussion that speaks to the sleeping stones, awakening no one, disturbing nothing, merely announcing your peaceful passage through this realm of rest. The sound of your movement echoes differently here than it would in the world beyond these walls. Each footfall seems to multiply softly, creating whispers that travel ahead of you down the corridor, preparing the way, letting the palace know that a friend approaches. The echoes do not bounce harshly from wall to wall, but rather seem to sink into the stone itself, becoming part of the palace's eternal memory of all who have walked these paths before. Between your steps, in those moments when your feet lift from stone to stone, there exists perfect silence. Not the empty silence of absence, but the full silence of presence, the kind of quiet that holds all possibilities, all peace, all the gentle dreams that palaces keep safe within their walls. In these pauses, you can almost hear the building itself breathing, settling deeper into its foundations, relaxing into the night. Your shadow moves beside you, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, as the corridor's gentle lighting shifts and flows. The light comes from sources you cannot quite identify, perhaps from braziers long since cooled but still emanating the memory of warmth, perhaps from windows that catch starlight and hold it like water in cupped hands. This light creates shadows that are not harsh or frightening, but soft companions that dance quietly along the walls. The walls themselves tell stories without words. Smooth stone worn gentle by countless hands that have traced their surfaces over centuries, seeking guidance, seeking comfort, seeking the simple reassurance that comes from touching something solid and permanent. The stone remembers these touches, holds them like benedictions, offers them back to you now as your own hand occasionally brushes the wall, finding in its coolness a kind of blessing. Above you, the ceiling curves gracefully, creating a sense of being held, protected, carried forward by the architecture itself. The height is perfect, neither so low as to feel confining, nor so high as to feel overwhelming. It speaks of builders who understood the human need for shelter, for proportion, for spaces that embrace rather than intimidate. The curve catches your footsteps and returns them to you softened, gentled, transformed into a kind of lullaby. The air moves differently in this corridor, creating the slightest of breezes that touch your face like whispered reassurances. This movement of air carries scents from deeper in the palace, hints of rooms yet to be discovered, gardens that sleep in moonlight, libraries where ancient books rest in perfect rows. The air itself becomes a guide, leading you forward with the softest touch, inviting rather than commanding, suggesting rather than demanding. As you walk, your breathing has synchronized with your footsteps, creating a rhythm that feels as old as the palace itself. Breathe in step, each cycle carrying you deeper into tranquility, deeper into the kind of peace that exists in spaces where time moves differently, where moments stretch and expand like pools of still water reflecting stars. The corridor curves slightly, so gradually that you barely notice the change in direction. This gentle turning creates the sense of being embraced, of being drawn into the palace's protective arms. There are no sharp angles here, no sudden changes that might startle or disturb. Everything flows with the organic grace of water finding its path through a landscape shaped by patience and wisdom. Along the walls, niches appear at irregular intervals, each one holding something beautiful and mysterious. A vessel whose purpose has been forgotten, but whose form still speaks of utility transformed into art. A small sculpture that might represent a bird, a flower, a flame, or perhaps something that exists only in dreams. These objects do not demand attention but offer themselves quietly to your notice, like friends who wait patiently for acknowledgement without ever insisting upon it. The stones beneath your feet vary subtly in texture and color, creating a path that feels almost like a river frozen in time. Some stones are darker, having absorbed more shadows over the centuries. Others catch what light there is and hold it, creating gentle pools of illumination that guide your way. The variation creates interest without distraction, pattern without repetition, unity without uniformity. Your pace has slowed naturally, not from fatigue but from recognition that this is not a place for hurrying. The corridor itself seems to teach the proper rhythm for movement here, the speed at which footsteps should fall, the cadence at which breathing should flow. You find yourself moving in harmony with the space, becoming part of its ancient rhythm, adding your voice to its eternal song of peace. The distance behind you seems to blur and fade, not forgotten but transformed into something dreamlike, while the path ahead remains clear and welcoming. This is not a place where you need to remember where you came from or plan where you are going. This is a place for existing purely in the present moment, for allowing each step to be complete in itself, each breath to be sufficient unto itself. The palace holds you in its stone embrace, supporting your journey without effort, carrying you forward on currents of ancient calm that flow like underground rivers through these corridors. You are not walking so much as being carried, not moving so much as being moved, becoming part of the palace's own quiet dance through the hours of night. Time flows differently here, measured not in minutes or hours but in heartbeats and breaths, in the soft percussion of footsteps and the gentle whisper of air moving through spaces that have learned the secret of perfect stillness. Each moment contains eternity. Each step covers infinite distance. Each breath encompasses the full cycle of sleeping and waking. Chapter 3. Moonlit Hall, Ancient Columns. The corridor opens gradually before you, widening like a slow exhale, like the palace itself is breathing you into a larger space. The walls draw back on either side, their closeness releasing into something more expansive, more generous with space and light. You find yourself entering what must be a great hall, though its boundaries remain soft in the dimness, its edges lost in shadows that feel warm rather than threatening. Moonlight falls through tall windows high above, silver streams that pour down like water made of light, pooling on the stone floor in patches of luminous calm. The light moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, as clouds drift across the face of the moon somewhere beyond these ancient walls. Each shift in brightness feels deliberate, measured, as if the night itself is breathing through these windows, filling the hall with its quiet rhythm. Columns rise from the floor like sleeping giants, their surfaces worn smooth by countless centuries. They stretch upward into the darkness above, disappearing into shadows that hold secrets of height and span. Between these columns, the moonlight weaves patterns of light and shadow, creating corridors within corridors, paths of brightness that lead deeper into the hall's embrace. Your footsteps echo differently here, the sound spreading outward and upward, finding new dimensions in which to resonate. Each step creates a small percussion that travels through the space, touching stone and shadow before returning to you transformed, gentled by distance and the hall's vast capacity for absorbing sound. The echo becomes part of the hall's own voice, joining the whispered conversation between stone and silence that has continued here for ages beyond counting. The air moves differently in this larger space, carrying new scents and sensations. There is the coolness of night stone, the faint sweetness of air that has traveled through gardens and courtyards before finding its way into this hall. Somewhere, perhaps from the windows above or through passages you cannot see, comes the gentlest of breezes, just enough to stir the air without disturbing the profound stillness that fills this place. You move between the columns, drawn by no particular destination but simply by the pleasure of movement through this beautiful space. Each column you pass reveals new perspectives, new angles from which to see the interplay of light and shadow, new ways for the moonlight to paint silver on stone. The hall seems to reshape itself around your passage, offering endless variations on its theme of quiet grandeur. The stone beneath your feet has been polished by time into something that feels almost soft, worn smooth by the passage of countless others who have walked these paths before you. Their presence lingers not as ghosts, but as a gentle warmth in the stone itself, as if the floor remembers every step it has supported, every journey it has witnessed. You become part of this history, your own footsteps adding to the accumulated memory held within these walls. High overhead, perhaps in alcoves or on ledges you cannot see, there might be the soft rustle of sleeping birds, creatures who have made their homes in the upper reaches of this hall and who share its peace with quiet gratitude. Their presence adds another layer to the hall's complexity, another voice in its choir of gentle sounds that never quite breaks the essential silence. The moonlight shifts again, and new patterns emerge on the floor, new pathways of brightness that seem to invite exploration. You follow one such path, allowing it to guide your steps toward what might be the far end of the hall, though distance here feels negotiable, subject to the hall's own sense of time and space. The journey is more important than any destination, the walking itself a form of meditation, a way of becoming more fully present in this moment, in this space. Between the columns, you catch glimpses of alcoves or smaller chambers, spaces that branch off from the main hall like thoughts branching from a peaceful mind. These spaces remain largely hidden in shadow, their mysteries intact, but their presence adds to the hall's sense of infinite possibility, of depths within depths waiting to be discovered, or simply acknowledged and left undisturbed. The sound of your breathing mingles with the hall's own respiration, the way old buildings seem to breathe with the changes in temperature and air pressure. The expansion and contraction of stone that has learned to move with the rhythms of day and night, season and season. You find your own breath naturally slowing, deepening, matching the hall's patient pace, its timeless rhythm of existence. Occasionally, from somewhere in the distance, comes the faintest suggestion of other sounds, perhaps water trickling in a fountain, perhaps the whisper of fabric stirring in a breeze, perhaps nothing more than the building's own quiet conversation with itself. These sounds, if they are sounds at all, add to rather than disturb the silence, becoming part of the hall's complex symphony of peace. The columns cast their own shadows, long dark shapes that stretch across the floor and up the walls, creating a geometry of darkness that complements the moonlight's geometry of brightness. You move through this interplay of light and shadow like someone learning a new language, discovering how darkness can be as welcoming as light, how shadows can guide as surely as brightness. Your hand trailing along the cool stone of a column as you pass reveals textures carved by time and weather, surfaces that speak of seasons beyond counting, of rain and sun and wind that have touched these stones through centuries of patient endurance. The stone feels alive beneath your touch, not with the quickness of growing things, but with the deep, slow life of mountains and earth, of foundations that understand permanence. The hall holds you in its spacious embrace, neither hurrying nor delaying your passage, simply providing space for movement and rest in equal measure. This is a place where time pools like the moonlight, gathering in peaceful accumulations that need never be spent or saved, only experienced in their fullness, their perfect sufficiency. Chapter 4. Gardens enclosed in stone, where water speaks in whispers. The moonlight leads you forward through corridors that begin to curve, their straight certainty giving way to something more organic, more alive. The air here carries new fragrances, green and growing, earth mixed with moisture, the sweet breath of leaves that have never known harsh sunlight. You breathe deeply, and the scent fills you with a peace that reaches back to childhood memories of hidden places, secret gardens, spaces where the world grew quiet enough to hear its own heartbeat. Ahead, an archway opens into something unexpected. Not another corridor, not another hall of stone and shadow, but a space where the palace has made room for wildness, where the ancient builders chose to invite nature inside rather than keep it at bay. Through the archway, you step into an enclosed garden, a courtyard where the roof has been left to the sky, where walls rise up on all sides but leave space for stars to enter, for moonlight to pool among leaves and flowers like silver water. The garden is not large, perhaps 20 paces across, perhaps 30, its dimensions softened by the plants that grow here in careful abundance. Trees rise from beds of earth built into the stone floor, their branches reaching toward the open sky with the patience of things that have learned to wait, to grow slowly, to find light wherever it might fall. The air moves differently here, stirred by leaves, warmed by earth, carrying the complex perfume of growing things that bloom in darkness. Water speaks somewhere in this green space, a gentle voice that murmurs without words, telling stories in the language of drop and ripple, of stream meeting stone. You follow the sound, your feet finding paths of smooth stone that wind between the planted beds, between the trees that cast their own shadows in patterns more complex than the geometric shadows of columns and walls. This is a different kind of darkness, softer, alive with the small stirrings of leaves, the whisper of water, the breath of earth. The fountain reveals itself gradually, not all at once. First, a gleam of water catching moonlight, then the dark shape of stone carved into curves and hollows. Finally, the full form emerging from the garden's gentle chaos. Water rises from the center in a column no higher than your waist, falls back into a pool lined with stones worn smooth by countless years of patient contact. The sound it makes is simple, essential, like the first sound the world might have made when it learned to sing. You stand beside the fountain and let the sound wash over you, through you, carrying away thoughts you did not know you carried, concerns that dissolve like salt in water. The splash and trickle creates a rhythm that matches something deep in your chest, in your breathing, in the quiet pulse that keeps you alive without asking permission or thanks. This is music made by physics and stone, by gravity and time, by the endless conversation between water and earth. Around the fountain, plants grow in arrangements that seem both planned and wild, as if the gardeners who tended this place understood that the most beautiful gardens are those that learn to tend themselves. Flowers bloom here in colors that moonlight makes mysterious, whites that glow like captured starlight, purples that disappear into the darkness only to emerge again when the light shifts, when your eyes find new ways of seeing. The fragrance rises from these flowers in waves, sometimes stronger, sometimes fainter, as the night air moves through the garden like a careful visitor, touching each bloom, each leaf, carrying messages from one plant to another in chemicals older than language. You breathe this perfume and feel your shoulders drop, your jaw unclench, your hands open from fists you did not know you were making. Benches wait in this garden, carved from the same stone as the fountain but worn smooth by hands and bodies that have found rest here through seasons without number. You choose one that faces the fountain, that gives you the best view of the water's endless dance, and lower yourself onto stone that welcomes your weight with the patience of things that have supported many burdens, offered comfort to many travelers. The bench holds you with perfect steadiness, neither too hard nor too soft, carved by people who understood bodies, who knew that rest must be earned by walking, that comfort must be simple to be true. From here, you can see the whole garden, can watch the interplay of water and plant, stone and shadow, can let your eyes move from the fountain's gentle activity to the still presence of flowers, to the reaching branches of trees that frame the open sky. Above, stars look down through the opening in the palace roof, and you realize that this garden exists in conversation with the sky, that it was built not just for the people who walk its paths, but for the light that falls into it, for the rain that must drum against its leaves in other seasons, for the wind that must stir its branches when storms pass over the palace like dreams across a sleeping mind. Time moves differently in this garden, pooling like the water in the fountain, gathering in the spaces between leaves, in the pauses between one drop and the next, between one breath and another. You let yourself sink into this different time, this garden time where minutes stretch like honey, where moments expand to hold all the awareness they require, all the peace they offer. The water continues its conversation with stone, patient, eternal, content to repeat the same essential statement through endless variations, each splash unique, each ripple original, yet all part of the same fundamental truth that water speaks when it finds stone to dance with, when it discovers gravity to give it purpose, and pools to give it rest. Your breathing slows to match the garden's rhythm, your heartbeat finding synchrony with the water's pulse, with the slow breathing of leaves that take in starlight and release dreams, that filter the night air through their green silence and return it purified, blessed, ready for lungs that have forgotten what clean air tastes like. This is a place where the palace shows its gentlest face, where the great institution of stone and power makes space for small things, growing things, quiet things that ask nothing but soil and water and time. The walls that enclose this garden are the same walls that form corridors and halls, but here they serve a different purpose, creating not passage but sanctuary, not movement but rest. Chapter 5. Ancient knowledge in silent halls, the scent of paper and ink. From the garden's gentle breathing, your steps find a different path, one that leads through an archway where climbing vines have learned to frame stone doorways with living embroidery. The transition happens so gradually that you might not notice when the night air changes, when the green scents of growing things begin to mingle with something else entirely, something that speaks of time in a different way. The corridor beyond the archway carries the first whisper of parchment and binding, of leather aged to softness and ink that has had centuries to settle into paper fibers. This is not the sharp smell of new books, but something deeper, richer, like the earth after rain, but translated into the language of human learning, human preservation of thought across the vast spans of time that separate one breathing moment from another. Your footsteps find stone floors worn smooth by countless scholarly passages, by the soft sandals of scribes and the measured pace of those who tend the great collections. The walls here are lined with alcoves, each one holding scrolls that rest like sleeping birds, their papyrus wings folded, their wisdom held in patient suspension until someone might come seeking the particular truth they contain. The light in this corridor comes from oil lamps set in niches, carved specifically for this purpose, their flames steady and golden, casting the kind of illumination that makes reading possible without disturbing the deeper quiet that libraries require. Each flame dances its small dance, but gently, as if it too understands the reverence that knowledge deserves, the careful attention that preserved wisdom demands. You pass beneath doorways that open into chambers where the real treasure lies, rooms where scrolls and bound volumes rest on shelves that reach toward shadowed ceilings. Some of these books are so old that their very existence feels miraculous, as if they have survived not through any particular care, but through their own patient determination to keep existing, to keep holding their cargo of human thought safe within covers that have learned to breathe with the changing seasons. The air itself seems to carry weight here, thick with the accumulated presence of all the minds that have contributed to these collections, all the hours spent copying and preserving, translating and protecting the ideas that might otherwise have vanished into the same silence that claims most human utterances. This is where breath becomes word, where word becomes mark, where mark becomes permanence of a sort that flesh cannot achieve. In one alcove, a single scroll lies partially unrolled, its surface covered with symbols that curve and flow like water frozen in the moment of movement. The ink has faded but not disappeared, holding its meaning in letters that seem to pulse gently in the lamplight, as if the thoughts they represent are still alive, still reaching across time to touch whatever mind might encounter them with proper stillness and attention. The papyrus speaks of rivers that no longer flow, of cities whose stones have returned to earth, of people whose names exist now only in these careful strokes of reed pen dipped in lampblack mixed with gum and water. Yet somehow their thoughts persist, their observations about the movement of stars and the properties of healing plants, their questions about justice and beauty, and the strange fact of consciousness contemplating itself. You breathe in the complex fragrance of this preservation, this act of faith that future minds will value what past minds discovered or imagined or wondered about during their brief time of seeing and thinking. The smell is layered like sediment, each element distinct yet part of a larger whole, the sweet decay of plant fibers returning slowly to earth, the metallic tang of iron-based inks, the animal richness of leather bindings that remember the creatures whose hides became containers for human ideas. Somewhere deeper in the library complex, a night scribe works by the light of a carefully tended lamp, copying texts whose originals are too fragile for frequent handling. The soft scratch of reed against fresh papyrus creates a rhythm so subtle it might be mistaken for the building's natural settling, for stone adjusting itself against the temperature changes that come with darkness and the gradual cooling of air. This scribe works without urgency, understanding that haste is the enemy of accuracy, that the proper copying of important texts requires the same patience that gardeners bring to growing, the same attention that cooks bring to preparing nourishment that will sustain rather than merely satisfy immediate hunger. Each letter receives its due care, each word its proper spacing, each line its appropriate relationship to the lines that surround it. The knowledge preserved here spans subjects that barely have names yet, observations and theories and carefully recorded experiments that future generations will build upon or discard according to their own discoveries. Maps of territories that exist now only in memory, recipes for medicines made from plants that grow in distant valleys, songs that capture the particular way light falls through clouds during the season of short days. Walking deeper into this labyrinth of learning, you pass chambers where different scribal traditions have left their marks in the very architecture. Here, alcoves built for scrolls that prefer to lie flat. There, shelves designed for codices that stand upright like sleeping soldiers. Each storage method speaks of different relationships between reader and text, different assumptions about how knowledge should be approached, how wisdom should be received. The silence here is not empty, but full, pregnant with all the voices that speak from these pages when opened by minds prepared to receive them. It is the silence of concert halls before the first note sounds, of theaters in the moment before the curtain rises, of dawn just before the first bird breaks the night's spell with song. In this silence, your own breathing becomes part of the library's respiratory system, your heartbeat joining the vast network of preserved pulses that continue to beat in metaphor and meter, in the rhythm of carefully constructed arguments, and the cadence of observations recorded with the precision that beauty demands. You are walking through centuries of human attention, through the accumulated results of minds that chose to look closely at the world and record what they saw there. Chapter 6. The Spiral Ascent, Stone Steps Rising. And from this silence, your feet find the beginning of something new, a path that curves gently upward along the library's far wall. Here, where the shelves give way to stone, a spiral staircase begins its patient ascent, each step worn smooth by countless feet that have made this same journey through the centuries. The steps are neither too high nor too shallow, carved by hands that understood the rhythm of climbing, the natural pace at which a human body prefers to rise through space. Your foot finds the first stone, then the second, and already you can feel how this ascent will unfold, measured and unhurried, like breathing made visible in stone. The wall beside you curves gently inward, following the spiral's logic, and your hand finds its surface naturally, fingertips reading the texture of stones fitted together with such precision that the mortar between them has become merely suggestion, the faintest line between one piece of eternity and the next. This is architecture that speaks of patience, of builders who worked without haste, knowing that what they created would outlast their names, their faces, their very language. As you climb, the light begins to change, not dramatically, but with the subtle shift that comes when moving through space that has been shaped by different purposes. The library's steady illumination gives way to something more varied, more alive to the possibilities of shadow and suggestion. Torches set into niches in the curved wall cast their gentle light at intervals, creating pools of warmth that your passage connects into a continuous river of soft radiance. The sound of your footsteps changes too, the solid whisper of stone against stone replacing the softer percussion of feet on wooden floors. Each step produces its own small echo that curves up ahead of you, announcing your presence to spaces you have not yet reached, preparing the silence for your arrival. The staircase spirals neither too tightly nor too widely, its curve generous enough that you never feel trapped within its turning, never lose the sense that you are moving through space that welcomes movement. The ancient architects understood something about the human need for openness even within enclosure, for the feeling of progress even within repetition. Climbing higher, you begin to glimpse, through arrow slits cut into the outer wall, fragments of the palace beyond. Not full views, but suggestions, hints of courtyards bathed in starlight, of other towers rising into the night like sleeping giants, of gardens where fountains continue their eternal conversations with gravity and stone. These glimpses do not distract from the climb itself, but become part of its rhythm, small gifts offered at regular intervals, reminders that this palace exists within a larger world of darkness and rest, of spaces that continue their quiet existence whether witnessed or not. Through one slit, a courtyard where moonlight pools around on a fountain that seems to whisper rather than splash. Through another, a garden path that curves away into shadows soft as velvet. The air itself seems to grow lighter as you climb, not thinner but somehow less weighted with the accumulated presence of centuries of scholars. This is air that has moved more freely, that has conversed with winds and weather, that carries hints of the vast night sky that spreads above the palace, like a dark blanket sewn with silver. Your breathing finds the rhythm of the ascent easily, each inhalation drawing you up toward the next step, each exhalation settling you into the stone beneath your feet. This is climbing without effort, movement that feels less like work than like cooperation with forces that want to help you rise, that have been waiting patiently for someone to accept their invitation upward. The torch flames flicker gently as you pass, responding to the small currents of air that your movement creates, but they never waver enough to threaten darkness. They are flames that have learned patience, that know their role is to provide comfort rather than drama, guidance rather than spectacle. Their light plays across the stones in patterns that seem almost alive, shadows that shift and dance but never in ways that startle or disturb. As you continue climbing, the space around the staircase begins to open slightly, the curve widening almost imperceptibly, as if the spiral itself is taking a deeper breath. The walls pull back by inches that feel like feet, creating a sense of expansion that comes not through sudden change, but through gradual acceptance of more space, more possibility. The stones beneath your feet begin to show variations in their shading, subtle differences that speak of different quarries, different seasons of cutting and placement. Some are pale as winter moonlight, others warm as autumn afternoons, but all have been worn to the same smooth texture by the passage of feet that climbed these stairs when their individual colors still mattered, when they were new enough to seem separate rather than part of a single, continuous creation. Here and there, carved into the inner wall, small niches hold objects left by previous climbers. Not treasures or offerings in any formal sense, but simple things that seem to ask for a resting place. A piece of polished wood worn smooth by handling, a small stone that caught someone's attention in some distant garden. These are not displays but accumulations, the slow result of people who climb these stairs feeling moved to leave something of themselves behind. The rhythm of ascent becomes meditation, each step a moment of presence, each turn of the spiral a gentle invitation to let go of whatever urgencies might have followed you into this space. Time moves differently here, measured not by the mechanical division of hours, but by the organic rhythm of rise and rest, of effort so gentle it barely qualifies as effort at all. Through the arrow slits now come sounds, as well as glimpses. The distant whisper of wind through courtyards, the soft splash of fountain water touching stone, the barely audible settling sounds that old buildings make as they adjust to the temperature changes that come with night, stones expanding and contracting by amounts so small that only the accumulated wisdom of centuries makes them audible at all. These sounds do not break the silence but join it, becoming part of the deep quiet that surrounds and supports all the small noises that make up the night's symphony. They are the sounds of a world at rest but not at sleep, of systems and cycles that continue their work without fanfare, without the need for witnessing or acknowledgement. The spiral carries you upward through this soundscape, through this gentle interplay of light and shadow, stone and air, past and present. Each step takes you further from the library's concentrated silence and closer to something else, some other quality of peace that waits in the spaces above. Chapter 7. The Corridor of Sleeping Chambers. The spiral stairway releases you into a corridor unlike the others you have walked. Here the stone floor is covered with long runners of woven cloth, their patterns faded to gentle suggestions of what they once were. The fabric absorbs the sound of footsteps almost completely, creating a hush so profound that the very air seems to hold its breath. This is a corridor of doors. They line both walls at regular intervals, each one carved from dark wood that has been smoothed by centuries of hands pressing against it. The doors are closed, as doors in such places should be at this hour, but they do not shut out life so much as they contain it, holding it safe within their boundaries. From beneath these doors comes the softest possible evidence of the lives that continue behind them. Not quite sound, not quite silence, but something that exists in the space between the two. The gentle rhythm of breath drawn and released in the slow cadence of deep sleep. You move along the runner with steps so light they barely register. The corridor stretches ahead and behind, punctuated by these doorways, by the warm wood against cool stone, by the promise of rest that emanates from each threshold like heat from embers banked for the night. At some doors, if you pause and allow your senses to settle into complete stillness, you can perceive the faintest stirring of air where it moves through the gap between door and frame. Warm air, carrying with it the accumulated breath of sleeping forms, the gathered peace of bodies at rest. This air moves so slowly, so gently, that it seems less like wind and more like the building's own breath, drawn deep and held, then softly released. The light here is different again. Softer than in the library, warmer than on the stairway. It comes from oil lamps set in niches carved into the walls, their flames steady and low, casting just enough illumination to suggest the shape of things without revealing them fully. The light pools around each lamp and fades gradually into shadow, creating a rhythm of brightness and dimness that matches the rhythm of the doors, of the breathing, of the slow passage of night through this protected space. Between the doors, the walls are hung with tapestries that whisper when the slight movement of air touches them. These are not the grand tapestries of reception halls, full of bold colors and dramatic scenes. These are quieter things, woven in muted tones that blend with shadow, depicting gardens at rest, still pools, birds with folded wings. Their threads are old and soft, and they move with the gentleness of leaves settling on still water. Some of the tapestries show scenes of night itself. A moon over sleeping fields, stars reflected in a pond, a grove of trees whose branches interweave to form patterns that lead the eye in gentle circles, never quite resolving into a final destination, always suggesting that there is more to see, but that it can wait until tomorrow, or the day after, or some other time when urgency does not press at the edges of perception. As you continue along the corridor, the sounds from behind the doors begin to weave together into something that is almost music. The rhythm of breathing, multiplied and layered, creates a soft pulse that seems to synchronize with your own heartbeat. Here a deeper breath, there a quieter one, there a small sound that might be someone shifting in sleep, adjusting a pillow, drawing a blanket closer. These are the sounds of safety, of bodies that have released the tensions they carried through the day and surrendered to the support of soft mattresses, warm coverings, familiar rooms. They are the sounds of trust, of the faith that the world will continue its work while they rest, that the walls will stand, that morning will come in its own time without any effort required from those who sleep. The runner beneath your feet shows wear in a pattern that suggests generations of similar journeys. Not the heavy wear of daytime traffic, but the gentle wearing that comes from countless quiet passages, from feet that moved as yours move now, with consideration for those who sleep, with respect for the peace that reigns in this place when darkness falls. At one door, so faint you must strain to be certain you hear it at all, comes the sound of someone talking in their sleep. The words are indistinct, soft syllables that rise and fall with the cadence of ordinary conversation, but emptied of urgency, of the need to be understood or answered. It is conversation with dreams, with memories, with thoughts that take shape only in the borderland between waking and sleeping. The sound fades as you pass, becoming part of the general murmur of the corridor, the collective breathing, the small sounds of adjustment and rest that create the night's quietest symphony. These sounds do not demand attention but simply exist, available to notice or not notice, to become part of the experience of moving through this space, or to remain in the background of consciousness like the sound of one's own pulse. The oil lamps flicker occasionally, their flames adjusting to minute changes in air pressure, to the opening and closing of unseen doors elsewhere in the building, to the slow circulation of air through passages and chambers. When they flicker, the shadows on the walls shift slightly. The tapestries seem to stir without any breeze to move them, and for just a moment the corridor feels more alive, more aware of itself and of your passage through it. But these moments pass quickly, and the steady glow returns. The shadows settle back into their accustomed places, and the sense of deep quiet reasserts itself. This is a place that accepts small changes without alarm, that incorporates the unexpected into its greater pattern of stability and calm. Some of the doors are slightly different from others. Here one has a carved panel that shows a tree in full leaf. There one has metal hinges that catch the lamplight with the dullest possible gleam. But these differences feel natural, accumulated over time rather than planned, the result of repairs made with whatever materials were available, of individual preferences expressed in small modifications. The corridor curves slightly as it extends, following the natural contours of the building or perhaps conforming to some architectural logic that prioritizes grace over strict geometry. This gentle curve means that you cannot see the full length of the passage, cannot know exactly how many doors remain ahead or how many you have already passed. The journey becomes timeless in this way, focused entirely on the present moment, on the next pool of lamplight, the next doorway, the next soft breath that emerges from the spaces where others rest. Chapter 8. The tower's viewing chamber, a quiet ascent. The gentle curve of the corridor leads you past more doorways, their soft breathing sounds growing fainter as you move away from the residential quarters. The lamplight remains steady, but something shifts in the quality of the space around you. The walls seem to draw back slightly, the ceiling lifts just a little higher, and there is a sense of opening, of expansion, though the change happens so gradually that you might not notice it until you pause to look around. Here the stones are different, not in color or texture, but in their arrangement. They seem more carefully fitted, more deliberately placed, as if this part of the palace required particular attention from its builders. The joints between them are so fine, they are almost invisible in the dim light, creating surfaces that feel smooth and continuous beneath your fingertips when you brush against them in passing. A new sound emerges, so soft it might be imagined. It is the whisper of moving air, not a wind or a draft, but the gentle circulation that happens in spaces connected to the outside world. This air carries with it the faintest suggestion of coolness, of distance, of heights that exist somewhere above. The corridor begins to turn, not sharply but in a slow spiral that draws you upward without strain. The floor maintains its smooth stone surface, but now it slopes almost imperceptibly, rising so gradually that your legs do not feel the effort of climbing. This is the way ancient builders knew how to create passages that led to elevated places without the harsh interruption of steep stairs, allowing the body to ascend while the mind remains calm and undisturbed. As you follow this gentle upward path, the character of the walls changes once more. Now they show the marks of different tools, different hands. Where the residential corridors bore the smooth finish of everyday use, these stones retain subtle traces of their shaping. Here a chisel mark catches a shadow. There, a surface shows the gentle undulation that comes from patient work with hand tools. These imperfections do not diminish the beauty of the space. Rather, they speak of human care, of time taken to create something meant to endure. The air grows slightly cooler still, and with it comes a new quality of silence. Not the intimate quiet of sleeping chambers, but the vast silence of open spaces, of distance, of places where sound can travel far and lose itself in emptiness. This silence feels different against your ears, less enclosed, more expansive. Windows begin to appear along the outer wall, though they are not windows in the ordinary sense. They are openings without glass or shutters, shaped arches that frame portions of the night beyond. Through them comes the faintest suggestion of starlight, not bright enough to illuminate the passage, but sufficient to remind you that this ancient place exists under the same sky that has watched over countless generations of sleeping and waking. The first of these openings shows only darkness, but as your eyes adjust, shapes begin to emerge. The silhouettes of rooftops far below, the suggestion of courtyard spaces, the gentle undulation of walls that follow the contours of the landscape. This palace, you realize, is built not just upon the earth but into it, conforming to natural ridges and valleys, becoming part of the terrain rather than imposing itself upon it. Moving past this opening, you find another and another. Each one offers a slightly different view, a different angle on the sleeping palace below. Through one you glimpse the faint gleam of water, perhaps a fountain or a small reflecting pool in a garden courtyard. Through another, the soft suggestion of trees, their branches creating intricate patterns against the star-filled sky. The upward spiral continues, so gentle that time seems suspended. There is no urgency here, no sense that this journey must be completed quickly or even completed at all. Each opening in the wall offers an invitation to pause, to look out into the night, to let your thoughts drift with the cool air that moves past your face. Through one of these windows, you notice something that makes you linger. Far below, in what appears to be a large courtyard, there is the smallest possible suggestion of movement. Not the movement of a person walking, but something gentler, more natural. Perhaps water flowing in a channel, or leaves stirring in a breeze too soft to feel at this height. The movement is so subtle that you cannot be certain it is really there, and this uncertainty becomes part of its charm, part of the way this place encourages contemplation without demanding conclusions. The stones beneath your feet continue their gentle rise, and now you notice that the quality of their sound has changed. Each footstep seems to resonate differently, as if the space around you has grown larger, more open. The walls are still there, still close enough to touch, but beyond them lies something vast, something that swallows sound and returns only the gentlest of echoes. Another opening appears, larger than the previous ones, and through it you can see more of the palace spread out in the darkness below. From this height, the structure reveals patterns that were invisible from ground level. The way buildings connect and separate, the logic of pathways between them, the relationship between enclosed spaces and gardens becomes clear in the dim starlight. The spiral path brings you higher still, and with each turn, each new opening, the view expands. What seemed large and complex when you were walking through it at ground level now appears as part of an even larger whole, a vast arrangement of structures that extends far beyond what you had imagined. This palace is not just a single building, but an entire world unto itself, a place where hundreds or perhaps thousands of people might live their quiet lives, connected by passages like the one through which you now move. The air grows thinner, cooler, carrying with it scents that speak of distance and elevation. There is the clean smell of stone that has been touched by mountain breezes, the faint suggestion of plants that grow in high places, adapted to cooler temperatures and thinner air. These scents blend with the familiar aromas of lamp oil and ancient wood to create something entirely new, something that exists only in places like this, where human habitation meets the vast indifference of the sky. The passage begins to level out, the upward spiral reaching its destination. The walls draw back even further, and you find yourself in a space that feels significantly larger than the corridors below, though still intimate enough to feel safe and enclosed. This is a chamber designed for looking out rather than living in, a place where the ancient inhabitants of the palace might have come to observe the night, to think long thoughts, or simply to experience the profound quiet that exists at such heights. Around the perimeter of this chamber, openings in the walls offer views in every direction. Through them, the sleeping palace spreads out like a map, drawn in shadows and starlight, its courtyards and gardens, its connecting passages and separate buildings all visible from this elevated perspective. The sight is both magnificent and utterly peaceful, a reminder of how much beauty can exist in the world without fanfare or announcement. Here at this height, with the cool air moving gently around you and the vast panorama of the ancient palace spread out below, time feels even more suspended than it did in the passages below. This is a place for contemplation that requires no specific thoughts, for appreciation that demands no particular understanding. The beauty simply exists, patient and eternal, waiting for whoever might climb the gentle spiral to witness it. Chapter 9. The quietest hour, palace breath and dreams. You remain in this elevated chamber where the cool night air carries something more than just the scent of distant gardens. There is a quality to the darkness here that feels different from the passages below, a kind of depth that suggests the palace itself is dreaming around you. The ancient stones seem to breathe in their own rhythm, slow and steady, as if keeping time with something far older than any human measurement. Through the openings in the walls, the view extends endlessly into the night. The courtyards below appear as pools of shadow, their fountains silent now, their pathways empty of footsteps. Yet there is movement in this stillness, the gentle shift of air through corridors, the whisper of leaves in gardens that have grown wild over centuries of quiet neglect. The palace lives and breathes, even in its deep rest, maintaining its own mysterious vitality. The stone beneath your feet holds the warmth of countless days, releasing it slowly into the cool night. This thermal rhythm speaks of continuity, of seasons that have come and gone without urgency or fanfare. Summer heat absorbed into these walls during bright afternoons now mingles with the crisp clarity of night, creating a temperature that feels perfectly balanced between day and darkness. From this height, you can see how the palace sprawls across the landscape like a sleeping creature. Its wings and courtyards, its connecting passages and isolated towers all seem to breathe together in the same unhurried rhythm. There is something profoundly peaceful about witnessing this architectural slumber, this ancient structure that has found its own way of existing in harmony with time. The air moves differently at this elevation, carrying whispers from distant parts of the palace that never quite resolve into words. These might be the sounds of wind through empty halls, or perhaps the echo of footsteps from centuries past, worn so thin by time that they exist now only as the faintest suggestion of movement. The palace remembers without effort, without strain, simply allowing its memories to drift through the darkness like gentle currents. Below in the courtyards, shadows pool and shift as clouds pass over the stars. These movements create patterns that seem almost intentional, as if the palace is painting pictures in darkness for whoever might be watching from above. Gardens that were once carefully tended now follow their own designs, creating beauty that needs no human approval or understanding. The stones around you seem to hold conversations in frequencies too low to hear, communications that have continued uninterrupted since the palace was young. There is wisdom in this patient discourse, knowledge accumulated not through study but through simple persistence, through the quiet observation of countless nights just like this one. Time moves differently in this elevated space, each moment stretching and expanding like ripples in still water. There is no urgency here, no destination that demands to be reached. The palace offers its own form of time, measured not in hours or minutes, but in the gradual shift of shadows, the slow circulation of air through ancient corridors. You find yourself settling more deeply into the rhythm of this place, your breathing naturally synchronizing with the gentle pulse of the sleeping palace. There is something profoundly restful about surrendering to this ancient tempo, allowing yourself to become part of the palace's quiet dreams. Chapter 10. Into the Embrace of Sleep. Your body finds its natural place within these ancient rhythms, muscles releasing their hold on the day as stone and flesh seem to merge into one continuous presence. The palace breathes around you, its walls expanding and contracting with the slow patience of centuries, drawing you deeper into its timeless embrace. The air itself becomes softer here, carrying whispers of dreams that have settled into every corner over the countless years. These are not urgent dreams, not the restless visions of ambition or fear, but the gentle dreams of a place that has learned the art of perfect stillness. They drift through the corridors like morning mist, barely perceptible yet somehow essential to the palace's quiet life. Your eyelids grow heavy, not with exhaustion, but with the profound peace that comes from finding your place within something far greater and more enduring than yourself. The stones beneath you seem to offer their own form of comfort, a support that has been refined through ages of holding travelers just like you, wanderers who sought rest within these protective walls. The distant sounds of the palace continue their eternal conversation, each creak and whisper a note in a lullaby that began long before your arrival and will continue long after. There is something deeply reassuring about becoming part of this ongoing song, adding your own quiet breathing to the chorus of the sleeping palace. Time loses all meaning as you sink deeper into this ancient sanctuary. Minutes could be hours, hours could be minutes, but such distinctions no longer matter. The palace offers its own measure of existence, one marked not by the passage of moments, but by the gradual deepening of peace, the slow surrender to the timeless rhythm that governs all things within these walls. Your thoughts begin to scatter like leaves on a gentle breeze, each concern and worry dissolving into the patient darkness that surrounds you. The palace accepts all of this, drawing your restlessness into its vast stillness, transforming anxiety into the soft pulse of shared dreaming. And as consciousness begins its gentle retreat, you become part of the palace's eternal story, another dreamer welcomed into the endless night that has embraced countless souls before you. The ancient stones hold you close, their wisdom flowing through your sleeping form, carrying you deeper into the timeless peace that waits within these forgotten halls.